Hello, my name's Ben,
And my name's Josh.
and welcome back to FPL Graduates. And welcome back to our GW9 team reveals. The game week is not far away. We've had some European games in midweek, so there is potential that we could have a couple of injuries here or there, but we'll have to just wait and see. So, without further ado, let's look into Josh's team.
Yes, getting into my team then. So obviously Friday night deadline this week, guys. So make sure you do lock your teams in on that Friday night, and not miss it on the Saturday, because it is a West Ham Leeds game, which I know can throw people off because they just don't look forward to that kind of fixture. Last week for me was a 200k green arrow, which obviously was positive, but at the minute it does feel like one step forward, two steps back with my sort of rank gains and falls at the moment. It seems like we've sat around 2 mil for a few weeks, so hopefully we can push on this week. I am quite happy with my team at the moment. We've got, I think, 9 out of the 11 playing at home, which is always a benefit. Okay then, so starting off in goal, we have David Raya. Crystal Palace at home this week. I'm not too confident of a clean sheet just because of how well Palace have been playing so far this season. Obviously, save points aren't really there with Raya either. It's usually a 6 or a 2. There's no real in between with him at the minute. So, obviously, we'll start him. I could play maybe Dubravka over him with Wolves away. It's definitely in consideration just to go with the one Arsenal defence for this week only. I'll sort of have to think about it. The only thing that sort of puts me off is that Burnley are away. If Burnley were at home, I'd 100% be considering it, but because they're away, it puts me off slightly just because their home record defensively has been so much better than their away record, not just this season, but also in the Championship last season. Going into defence then, Gabriel is Gabriel. He is not Van Dijk. I just haven't changed the picture and it's thrown me off completely. So yeah, he's in there this week. So I would have one Arsenal coverage there. Obviously, he's off the back of a goal and an assist and a clean sheet in the Champions League. So he's absolutely flying at the moment for Arsenal. So yeah, obviously I would much prefer to start Gabriel over Raya. Obviously, Gabriel is not going to be benched this week. I think you're getting the attacking threat from him as well. I also think it's a potentially decent game for Defcons for him as well, which will be an added bonus if they aren't to get the clean sheet. Tosin is in at the moment. I made this graphic before seeing the Chelsea lineup against Ajax. He is obviously starting in that game, and then the whole back four from the Nottingham Forest game was on the bench. I just don't know what to really make of that. If I had to guess, I'd say that the back four that started against Forest will probably start against Sunderland, just because Achimpong played really, really well. I probably butchered his name, but yeah, he played really good against Nottingham Forest. So it's one to consider. If I do obviously not play Tosin, I'll just bring on Joe Rodon against West Ham at home. It's a slight clash with my team, as you'll see later on, but Joe Rodon's typically quite good for Defcons. He's averaging around 9 per 90 so far this season. And then to finish off the defence, we've got Marcus Senesi, Nottingham Forest at home this week. Obviously, Sean Dyche is in charge, so it's a bit of a goose egg. No one knows what's going to happen there, but I wouldn't imagine he's going to get a massive turnaround out of that Forest team immediately. And obviously, Senesi is just the Defcon monster. He picks them up almost every single week, so yeah, he'll be a sort of a mainstay in the team. What's the thoughts on the defence, Ben?
Yeah, I mean a solid defence to start with, and of course there is that element of risk with Palace and the Arsenal defenders this week. But I do think the defence is good enough to potentially keep a clean sheet, so I wouldn't worry too much. Tosin is an interesting one. I don't think he starts unfortunately this weekend. I don't think Maresca is going to change a back four that's playing well. So for me, you're looking at potentially Rodon off the bench, which is not the worst case scenario, but it's not the best, as we'll see when we go on to your midfield. And then Senesi, I think, is a fantastic option and should be hitting DEFCON in that game. I'd be very surprised if he didn't.
Indeed. So yeah, going on to the midfield then. Starting off with Iliman and Jai. Actually, quite looking forward to him this week. Tottenham at home. It's a pretty good fixture, I'd say, at the moment. With obviously no Romero for Spurs, that's only a benefit for Everton. I think Spurs in general, just seem a bit stuck in the mud at the moment. Like their performances have just not been fantastic. And yeah, I think like I mentioned, I think in the Game Week Guide video, the European fixtures combined with the small squad It's sort of being quite a negative impact on them at the moment. So yeah, looking forward to him obviously on penalties as well. So talismanic in that regard. Semenyo's next. Obviously, don't really need to speak about him much. He picked up another assist at the weekend. Forest at home. It's a good fixture at the moment. Again, I don't see Sean Dyche having such a huge impact in what is it, like 3 or 4 days that he's sort of been there. Bruno Fernandes at home to Brighton should be an interesting one. Obviously, he picked up that late assist at Anfield and snatched all 3 bonus points, which is really, really handy. We haven't seen him pick up DEFCON for a couple of weeks now, which is interesting. Obviously, going up against Brighton, I can imagine that's going to be a massive midfield battle. So maybe some higher DEFCON potential there. And obviously, it was good to hear that Amorim was quite positive about Bruno taking the penalties for United going forwards as well. So that sort of brushes away the sort of anxiety maybe of him not taking penalties in the future. Lucas Paqueta is up next, and it's so frustrating as an owner seeing him start up front. It's one of those weird situations where him being out of position, playing up front, is actually a negative for his FPO output because it takes away his defcons, which he has been pretty good at when he has been playing in midfield. And then obviously him playing up front is just he's getting no service, and there's just nothing happening up front for West Ham at the moment. So yeah, hopefully we see Callum Wilson maybe, even though he got 0 minutes against Brentford, or at least Marshall start up front. I just don't want to see Paqueta starting up top against Leeds on Friday night. So that's the midfield. Obviously, that's where the clash comes into play with Joe Rodon. So yeah, it wouldn't be ideal. I could maybe start Minte ahead of Paqueta. It will just sort of be a roll of the dice between whether I think that sort of Paqueta starts up top again, which at the moment I think is quite likely, if I'm being honest, just because there's just no real options for West Ham in that forward line right now. What's the thoughts on the midfield then?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting the Paqueta situation because, of course, he's not been the FPL that we thought he was going to be when you brought him in, which, yeah, I mean, West Ham haven't helped you with that at all with their performances. Bruno, I think, is a good option, of course, going to be on penalties again. So that's a worry sort of you don't have to worry about anymore. Semenyo, I expect his returns to start slowing down a bit more and become a bit more reasonable and in line with his XG stats. And then Dyer, I agree with you. I think he's a good option. He's an exciting option to have. And for me, I think that he's a sort of long-term pick that you can rely on for returns every other week. So for me, pretty good in terms of that midfield. And yeah, for Minter, I'd be very tempted to start him this week, just given the clash, and I think it's highly likely that you start Rodon if you don't make any transfers this week.
Indeed. Going into the forward line then, we've got Gyökeres up first, and as mentioned in the Game Week Guide video, I'm 100% happy holding him this week. Palace conceded 5 goals in the last 2 games. So yeah, I think Arsenal will score goals against this Palace team. I think it will be a lot harder, maybe similar performance to the Fulham game. But then even after that, they've got 2 newly promoted sides in Sunderland and Burnley. So yeah, a nice fixture run. More than happy to hold him for now. João Pedro's next, Sunderland at home this week. Again, a full week's rest, which is really handy for him. He does look a bit tired, especially against Forest last week. Just the one shot. I thought he could have done a lot better with it, despite it being off target. It was a good opportunity. So, yeah, sort of living off scraps at the minute, I'd say. But hopefully, playing Sunderland, I think you've got Wolves in a couple of weeks as well. Those are the fixtures that we're hoping for a haul from him, like we saw against West Ham earlier in the season. And then Erling Haaland on the captaincy, not much to think about with him. Just wouldn't really consider another option in the team this week. Just in general, the fixtures, there's no standout fixtures at the moment for this week, I'd say, to target. So Erling Haaland is default captain. As we've mentioned throughout my team selection, I think that the likelihood of Minte and Rodon coming in for Paqueta and tossing is probably quite high. I don't quite like benching Paqueta because he's a pen taker, but if he's starting up top, like I imagine he probably will be, I'll 100% bench him because, it's just not a good look as we saw on Monday night. So that's my team for this week.
Okay, so moving on into my team, and last week we hit the bench boost. We have had a huge rank rise from 1.1 million to 425k in the world. We came off the back of hang on, let me just check how many points I got. 88 points that game week. So my bench did consist of, who do we have? We had Sanchez, Van der Ven, Esteve, and Morgan Rogers, I want to say. So, it ended up being a good return for me. So, very happy with that. We've only got one free transfer and point three in the bank. So, for me, I don't think I'll be making any free transfers this week. I've got a couple of issue areas that I don't want to address in one free transfer. I want to give it one more week, and we'll talk through that. So in goal, I've got Sanchez with Sunderland at home. Fairly happy to hold him for the good fixture run that Chelsea have. I think there's potential there for a clean sheet. Pedro Porro starts in at Everton away. This is one of the areas in which I'm looking to potentially change over the next couple of weeks. Spurs haven't been too great. Porro's been rotated out every so often. I think there's been one game this season where he's been rotated out. I think that happens more often through the Champions League campaign. So for me, I'm giving him a one more week and likely shipping him out. Esteve in there as well. As we spoke about in the game week guide, I'd heavily recommend at least starting one Burnley defender if you do have them. I won't be starting Dubravka this week because Sanchez does have, that really good fixture for a team that is much better than Burnley. And then Gabriel rounds off the defence. He's been fantastic since I've brought him in, albeit was a little late on the bandwagon, but got on and got the points there that Gabriel got last week. So, Josh, what's the overall thoughts there on the defence?
Yeah, I think that it's a solid defence for this week, to be fair. Everton are not full of goals. Jack Grealish is back this week, which I think will be a good improvement for them. But yeah, they're not going to fly away, I don't think, with that game. It should be an interesting one, to say the least. Sanchez is a great pick and goal. It gives you, access to that Chelsea clean sheet fairly securely, minutes-wise, which is nice. Esteve I like this week. I'd play him if I had him myself. I think it's a good fixture. Wolves just look devoid of ideas going forwards. So yeah, for me, I think that's a good chance of a clean sheet if they are going to get one away from home. I think it would be, in a week like this for Burnley. And then yeah, Gabriel's been a monster in the last few weeks, just absolutely crazy. Yeah, very happy that I hopped on him when I did last week.
Moving on into the midfield, and like I said, we've also got Semenyo. Not too much to say about him. Reinders seems to be one of those other problem areas that I've identified in recent weeks. He hasn't been returning at the rate I thought he would, which is one every 2 or 3 game weeks. The returns seem to have dried up, but I'm giving him another go this week. Villa away, not the worst fixture, not the best fixture, definitely. So we'll have to just wait and see on that. Bukayo Saka's been fantastic since I've brought him in. 7 points last week without an attack and return. That's pretty fantastic if you ask me. And then Morgan Rogers rounds off the midfield. He's had, he hasn't blanked in the last 3 game weeks, so he is seemingly turning a corner. Just so happens it coincides with the news coming out that he is now negotiating his new contract for Aston Villa. So I am fairly confident I'm going to hold him again this week if that contract hasn't been signed off yet. And he has looked, fairly decent, particularly last game week. That goal against Spurs was pretty good. He seems to be improving week by week, bit by bit. So happy to hold for now, at least for one more week anyway, and then I'll reassess, those 3 players that we spoke on. Josh, what's the thoughts then on the midfield?
Yeah, I think overall it's solid. I wouldn't be scared of that City at home fixture from a Villa point of view. They've definitely improved in recent weeks from their performances to the start of the season. It was pretty dire, but you've held Rodgers long enough to see it pay off and get some of the attack and returns rewarded for that. Saka, obviously, yeah, probably the best Arsenal asset overall, maybe between him and Gabriel. But yeah, he's very, very good going forwards, and obviously got the 2 easier fixtures in the next couple of weeks. Reinders is an interesting one. Obviously, he got taken off pre-60 last game week, but only came on as a sub in like the 73rd minute, I think, in the Champions League midweek. So if I had to put money on it, I'd say that he probably starts against Villa this week. But yeah, he's definitely probably someone that you might want to ship on going forwards now that Cherki, Marmoush, etc., they're all back in the team. So yeah, minutes there is going to be a concern for sure. And yeah, Semenyo obviously is the go-to pick in midfield.
Okay, so moving on to my strikers, and similar to Josh, I've got Haaland on the captaincy. That's set and secure for this week, as we spoke about in the game week guide. João Pedro in there as well. Again, like I said in game week guide, not going to be looking to sell him anytime soon. If Delap's back soon, then we could see him starting to play in the 10 again, which is good for us FPL managers because his attacking output increases when he plays further away from the goal, which is interesting. And then Jared Bowen, who I brought in last week for that bench boost, was pretty unsuccessful last week, but with a good fixture run, more than happy to keep him for the foreseeable. And then to round off the team, we've got Dubravka, Van der Ven, and then the two Palace boys, Richards and Jeremy Pino on the bench there. So, Josh, that's the overall team. There's no plan on making any transfers this week. I'm going to hold that free transfer, go into game week 10 with potentially 2 free transfers and a couple of moves to make. What's your thoughts on the overall team?
Yeah, I think the team definitely can survive an extra week, like you allude to, sort of banking one to be more flexible going forwards. A lot of good fixtures, specifically in the forward line as well, with Pedro and Bowen. You'd hope for returns for both of them this week as well. And then, yeah, obviously you've doubled up on Palace already, which is a big benefit to have moving forwards going through game week 10 when their fixtures turn, which is great. So, yeah, overall, really solid team. Okay, then so that wraps up our game week 9 team reveals. Me and Ben both planning to roll our transfers this week, which should be an interesting one. Obviously, trying to save them up, make some probably bigger moves in the weeks to come. So, yeah, make sure you stay subscribed to see what our transfer updates will be next week.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the FPL graduates. I've been Ben,
I've been Josh.
and we'll see you guys
Next time, have a good game week, everyone.